IGFA President Rob Kramer.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to IGFA and welcome to the legendary Captains and Crews Awards event tonight. There's a few people in the audience that I would like to say thanks to and to recognize. Actually, everybody in this audience is pretty much famous in some way or another. But we're gathered here this evening to recognize the hard work, talent, and skills of the world's greatest captains and crew members. On behalf of all of us here at the IGFA and the legendary captains and crew committee members, we wanted to welcome you all here tonight. Some of you have come a very long way, and we're very grateful for your travel and look forward to sharing this special evening with you. I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize a couple people. First, I would like to recognize the IGFA Hall of Fame members that are in the audience here tonight. IGFA trustee, Dr. Guy Harvey. Where are you, Guy? Speaking of famous captains, Captain Alan Merritt. Alan, I saw you earlier. And we have a couple more captains here. Captain Joan Vernon. And seated at my table, Captain Peter B. Wright. Peter. Many of you know that since 1940, IGFA has been getting representatives around the world. Some of you have fished in remote places. I know my buddy Skip Smith and many of you have, and these representatives, we now have 326 in 90 countries around the world. There are ambassadors out there. We work with them on fisheries issues, on conservation, on education, on record issues. All the IGFA representatives in the audience tonight, please stand. I think we have a few here. Thanks for coming. As a nonprofit, we rely on our lifetime members and donor society members, and I saw many of the badges when I was walking around today. So if you're a lifetime member of IGFA or a donor, please stand. Thanks. These events are not easy to put on, and we've got a great group of staff members here at IGFA. All the employees at IGFA put work into these events, but I'd particularly like to thank Miss Julia Schaefer. Where are you, Julia? Eric Combast, my good buddy Mike Myatt, and Denise and Don and Dale, everybody that helped out. Thank you guys so much. These events also wouldn't take place without the generosity of our sponsors, so I'd like to recognize a few sponsors we have in the audience. Costa, Dave Bultice, I think I saw you here, Amanda and Mike. Custom Shootout, Captain Skip Smith. Guy Harvey Ocean Foundation, Dr. Guy Harvey again. Mercury Marine with Steve Fleming and Scott Beatty. Thanks, guys. And my friend, I haven't seen him in a long time, is Bobby Carter from Mississippi Gulf Coast Billfish Classic. Bobby, thanks. Bobby, Jimmy told me that they brought 30 people with them, and if it wasn't for Mardi Gras, they would have had 60. So we thank you guys for coming. Also like to thank Smith Merritt Insurance. They're our bar sponsor, which is very important. Skip Smith and Roy Merritt. Thank you, guys. Sportsman's Adventures with Captain Rick Murphy. Rick, you're always helping us out. Thanks, buddy. And then our caterer tonight is Scarfoni's Catering. Angie and her husband, Chef Danny. Thank you both, too. The IGFA Hall of Fame committee is made up of board members from IGFA. This committee here is made up of famous captains, legendary captains from around the world. They do the process of selecting. Skip will tell you about that in a little bit. But I'd like to recognize the committee members. I think we have something up on the screen there. Carl Anderson, Gary Ellis, Bart Garnsey, Billy Harrison, Charles Perry, Bouncer Smith, Gary Stuve, Lori Wright, Peter Wright, and the chairman, Skip Smith. You guys make it happen. Thank you very much for all the work on this. Unfortunately, there's two other committee members whom many of you know in this room that couldn't be here with us. Is Steve Lasley and Bobby Brown, who's at home in Georgia celebrating his 70th birthday today. So we miss those guys. The next part in my script here is I introduce our MC for the evening, and I see he crossed out his own bio up here, so he doesn't want me to read it, but I don't really have to, because everybody, more or less in this room, probably everybody knows Captain Skip Smith. Skip traveled the world on the Madam and the Hooker. Skip has been an integral part of the fishing community, not just in South Florida, but all over the world. He's an innovator, he's a pioneer, he's a gentleman, and he's a hell of a fisherman. I'm happy to have him here tonight. Thanks, Skip. Come on up. How's that? Is that better?
That was perfect, Rob. Thank you for being nice to me tonight. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I mean, if it wasn't without each and every one of you, this wouldn't be worthwhile. I mean, you guys are the ones that make this thing happen. It's unbelievable that this event's gone on and it become what it's become today. Number two, the IGFA is still in this building. Isn't it amazing? I mean, the rumors that were going around, for any of you that haven't been just above and beyond that curtain up there, that's the library. That's the real jewels of the IGFA. We lost some plastic things behind the walls. Johnny Morris helped us out here. But if you guys really want to see the IGFA, get down here, go upstairs in that room and spend about 2 days. You won't believe your good luck. It is beautiful. I know you're all excited to be here tonight. Events like this, they get a little noisy at times. Everybody's happy to see each other, but we do appreciate your respect and quiet in between all the different speeches and things that happened tonight, and we thank you for your respect. Again, I'd like to thank my partner in crime, Mike Myatt, for all the help he does with this event. Thank you, Mike, for being there for me. And thank you, Julian, Eric, and the staff here, and Joni at IGFA for everything you've done to make this thing what it is. Thanks, Rob, for taking off your tie. I feel a lot better now. Tonight we'll be honoring the 2016 class of the legendary captains and crew by presenting the Tommy Gifford Award to the inductees. Tommy Gifford is considered one of the most innovative blue water anglers who ever lived, and one of the greatest charter skippers to guide anglers to the major game fishes of the sea. He began his chartering career in Miami in 1920. Gifford was the first to use spreader outriggers on the East Coast. I know, Alan Merritt, you're going to argue with me. And the first to catch Atlantic blue marlin with these new devices. Over the course of his 50-year career, he developed an encyclopedic knowledge of game fishing techniques to catch them. And he served as a guide and consultant to some of the most famous names in saltwater angling, including Van Hampton Heidner, Charles Lehman, Michael Lerner, and Ernest Hemingway. He never lost his zest for the sea or his awe at the creatures beneath the waves. Raymond Camp wrote, "Big game angling has a brief history, but Tommy Gifford's name is sharply etched on every page." So to get this award, you really earned something really special. In the room this evening, we have several past recipients of the prestigious awards. Gentlemen, please stand and be recognized. I call your name. Gary Ellis, Bart Garnsey, Sorry, Bart, got him coming out of the head. Alan Merritt. He's standing up. There you go, Alan. Charles Perry. I don't know where he got off to. There he is back in the corner. Chip Schaefer, he finally got some time off to join us. Chip, thanks for coming out. Bouncer Smith. You always get the most applause by Bouncer. You got to teach me your secret. Gary Stuve. And last but not least, Captain Peter B. Wright. The primary criteria for receiving the Tommy Gifford Award from the IGFA is that the captain or crew member must have provided leadership in their trade and have earned the respect of their peers, thus making a meaningful contribution to the sport of recreational angling over an extended period of time. The nominee must demonstrate that he or she has exposed the ethical angling standards stated by the founders of the IGFA. To quote Mark Sosin, "There is no greater honor than to be recognized by your peers. You cannot buy it, you have to earn it." To nominate a candidate, please contact Mr. Mike Myatt here at the IGFA, or you can contact myself. We'll get the names in, but we do like a bio with the names. We definitely need a bio. Tonight's first member of the 2016 class is Captain Billy Baum. To tell you a little bit more about Billy, please welcome Captain Charles Perry to the stage. Charles, come on up here and tell us. I don't see too many children out there, so it should be pretty safe here tonight. Charles, have at it.
Thank you, Skip. I got this bit here I'm supposed to read, I guess. So it's Captain Billy has been fishing in fruitful waters off Organ Inlet, North Carolina for over 50 years. He's fished a lot of other waters also. A native of nearby Wanchese, Billy resides in his hometown during the summer months, and he spends his winters in Florida. He's been spending those in Florida for quite some time now. Where he took parties fishing here in Florida for 33 years as a charter boat captain. Billy became widely known and admired among coastal anglers during his long career as a licensed captain, both for finding and catching fish, but also for building boats that he took to sea. He built 6 boats, I believe that's correct, and his first he built at 24 years old. And he told me that he was having someone else to build this boat, and he was working hard on the motor, and he got the motor ready and put it in a truck, took it to the boat building area, and the man had laid the first plank on the boat. So he had to build a boat around the motor that he took there. So he built his first boat at 24, but he retired in 2004, but he still owns his boat. The last boat he built is called the Dream Girl, and Captain Jason Sneed runs it out of Organ Inlet still today. In total, Billy estimates that he has fished approximately 6,000 charter clients in his career. Looking back on most of the memorable trips, Billy recounts an exceptional catch of big eye tuna. After a day of multiple hookups, they boated 8 big eyes, ranging in size from 175 to 200 pounds. I'm certain that Billy could probably think of many other memorable trips without too much problem. There were many blue marlin catches and releases off Organ Inlet as well. Well, I have one little small story I'm going to tell, and this might not go over too well with Billy, but I did ask Miss Wilma first if it was okay. And this is a WB. This is before Miss Wilma, so it's okay, I hope. But one of my dear friends before was Murray Cudworth, who was a very, very good friend of mine, and he is one of the first guys that I fished regularly with offshore. The first year after he left Captain Billy as a mate, but he worked many years as a mate for Captain Billy, and they were very successful. And Captain Billy, needless to say, was an exceptional boat handler, most especially with a single screw boat. I still today have not seen anyone that could compare to Captain Billy with a single screw boat. He's done it quite a bit in his life, and he's the best I've ever seen. So he used to come back into the dock, and the people would gather along the bulkhead at the fishing center to see the catches unload. And he would always come back in, and being the boat handler that he was, he would back in at a pretty fair rate of speed, and quite often he would wash water up on the dock, run the people back. It was kind of a fun thing to do. So Murray knew that was usually going to happen, so he was standing right in the corner of the boat most afternoons, and there was a small finger pier there, and he would reach out to grab that line to put it around that cleat, because he knew, he told me when Captain Murray told me this story, he said when he knew that the clutch was going to fail one day and we were going to fetch up in the bulkhead. Well, he was reaching back one day for the line to wrap it around that cleat real quick, and as he was reaching out just before he grabbed the line, Billy dropped her in out of reverse and put her in forward, and she just squatted right there and shot back out of the slip, and it almost threw Murray out of the boat. He looked around, and some of the charter had been thrown aside, and he didn't know what was going on. And Billy looked back and said, "Going to the fuel dock." And that was all he said. So they never go to the fuel dock before they unload the fish. So he said they went on to the fuel dock, and as soon as they backed in the fuel dock, Murray tied the boat up and said he was still wondering what was going on. And they looked around, and Billy stepped off the boat and on the dock, and he said, "You put her to the dock. I'll see you in the morning." Murray said all night he couldn't figure out what was going on, So the next morning, Billy comes down, he said, "Captain Billy," said, "I don't know what was going on there yesterday." He said, "Well," he said, I said, "I was backing in that slip," and said, "I saw this young lady up there that I felt pretty sure she was going to think that she was with me," and said, "When I looked down on the other side," said, "I saw another one. And she thought she was going to be with me too," and said, "Then when I saw the third one, she had her husband with her. I knew it was time to go." Now, I wasn't there, and I can't swear to it, but I believe my friend Murray would have told me the truth. So now I'd like to invite Captain Bart Garnsey up here, who I know will top it, and Paul Spencer, who I know can do very well too.
Boy, what a privilege this is. I've got several hundred Billy Baum stories, and I don't think I can tell any of them. I'm serious. See, Billy's a real character. A long, long time ago, there's a few of us did in here. We took a senior trip to Southeast Asia, and I came back and was probably semi-unemployable, as a few of us were, like Chip Schaefer and Charles and whatnot. And I got a job running a pretty old seated charter boat out of Hillsborough Inlet, and most of the guys there I'd known since I was a little kid, but I knew absolutely nothing about engines and not much about a lot of other things on a charter boat. I grew up on a drift fishing boat. But right across the dock from me was Billy Baum, and every 4 or 5 days when I broke down, the only guy that would come over there and work till 11, 12 o'clock in the middle of the night and help us was Billy Baum. And I learned right there that he was a pretty special individual. As the years went by, I've learned a few more things about the fishing business, and Billy invited me to go over tuna fishing with him, and I did that for 2 years. I realized that he was hands down probably one of the best boatmen that had ever been around. There was never a boring moment. And we finally got the opportunity to go up to Newfoundland and go fishing. And that was one of the highlights of my young career at that time. And so we went up there and had, to me, a most incredible time fishing. And Al Merritt was up there, Joe Model, out of the legends in this industry. It was quite a thrill for me. And while we were up there, we fished along. The fishing was pretty good. And we're coming in one day, and I knew Billy was kind of fishy. I mean, he knew a lot of stuff. He saw a lot of stuff that most people didn't see. And we're coming in one afternoon, the fishing had been kind of slow, and nothing changed. I mean, everything was the same as it had been day after day. And Billy starts looking around, and he says, "It's getting ready to happen." I thought, yeah, it's going to happen. We're going to go in and get a beer, I hope. And he says, "No." He said, "Pay attention now." He said, "Pay attention." And he'd reach over and nudge it, what he considered a nudge, which would generally just put you about halfway out of the boat. And he said, "Pay attention, it's getting ready to go off." So I thought I was paying attention. I'm looking around, nothing changed. Nothing changed. And he makes a turn, goes back around. We're using an old single-screw Newfie skiff, and it was kind of pretty broken down. Billy made a couple turns. He says, "Get ready now. It's going to happen." I thought, yeah, it's going to happen. We're going to die of thirst out here. And he kept going around. Pretty soon, boom, we had pulling a daisy chain. One piles on, we got him on. I thought, well, that's pretty impressive. But he started paying a little attention. I guess he forced me into paying attention. As I started to watch, everything was changing, but I really couldn't see it. But Billy could, and he made another turn. Boom, got another tuna. Giant bluefins, 700-800 pounds average. And I realized right then that Billy knew a lot more about this trade than most people have ever been around. And before you knew it, we caught a third one. And with that one, we were ginning around a little bit. And Billy was a remarkable boatman. And he took everything pretty much to the limit. We ended up spun the rudder around, and we busted the rudder off. And, of course, we bent the propeller up pretty good, and things weren't looking too cute. So we took a couple of oars. This wasn't my idea, but there's nobody else to call. And Billy had us strap the oars on the stern cleats, and with us stealing with a couple of oars. And those, I said oars, now that was O-A-R-S, oars. And in we went, and got in that way. And we ended up, Newfoundland has a pretty good tide, and we ended up pulling up on the dock, and we actually pushed the bow up on the sand, and we went overboard, and the water was, as I remember, was about 42 degrees. And, of course, we didn't have any wetsuits or anything. We just put on dungarees and rain gear and the whole mess, and got overboard, and we ended up pulling the shaft off and pulling the broken propeller. We didn't have to worry about the rudder. It was already gone. And so we kind of piecemealing the thing. We got a new rudder welded on, and I think we found a propeller. So I said, "Well, Billy, we're doing fine, but we have a problem. The shaft's bent." He said, "Don't worry about it. I'll straighten it." I thought, I'm waiting to see this. Now, this is going to be good. And he took the shaft and a sledgehammer, and he went up there and he beat on the shaft a little bit, and he'd roll a little bit, and he'd beat on a little bit, and then he stuck it up on the back of a pickup truck. And he fiddled around with it a little bit, and he got it all right. By the time we got a rudder and a new propeller, he had the shaft straightened, and we stuck it in, and we went off fishing. I thought, you know what? I think I'm with a real fisherman here now. It was a real privilege, and I learned an awful lot with Billy Baum. It was a real privilege for me.
What a wonderful evening. You know, it's an honor for me to be here to get to talk about my friend, Billy Baum. And I'm a little humbled by it, to tell you the truth, because I've grown up admiring him. I had a few minutes in the lobby and to talk with some friends, Chip Schaefer and Tony Tillett, guys that I admire, and they were telling me how much Billy had been a mentor in their lives, and I was like, boy, he's really been a great one in mine. So just to reiterate, it's an honor for me to even get up here and just be able to share a little bit about Billy. I heard about Billy all my life, really, from when I was a really young teen. They used to take us little kids as mates on the boats, and I always heard legends and rumors about the bomber. Well, Billy comes from, first I want to tell you, Billy comes from a very wonderful family of fishermen. His father, Waylon, was a real pioneer in the fishing industry in our area many, many years ago. Commercial fishing, sport fishing, and even back then it was market hunting and killing ducks and sending them off. He was Mr. Whalen was a man's man. I think Mr. Whalen lived to be 103. I think he painted his house when he was about 99 by himself. And I want to tell you something. You've heard the old adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It's true. Billy he's always been a man's man to me. I've just always looked up to him. He's been a wonderful example. I first came to know Billy well about 39 years ago when I started running boats myself out of Oregon Inlet as a charter captain. And I just always admired Billy. He always got his share of the fish, I can tell you that. And I think a lot of days he got his share and a good part of mine. He was always doing a good job. I could follow him around. I could catch fish. Billy was going to be where they were at. Billy helped me in many ways. You know, I think back of the time, maybe I went to Billy and was telling him about backing up, trying to catch this fish backing up or something, and he sat me down and said, "Paul, that's not the way you do it. You got to run them down." And I remember to this day Billy teaching me how to run a fish down. He said, "Now don't you go chasing the fish. You'll cut him off. You got to run your line." And I think I used that many, many times in my little career. Well, I think some of the most exciting times I was doing what Billy told me to do. He taught me a lot, but not just me. There was many, many people in that industry that Billy helped and taught, and you were going to hear his opinion whether you liked it or not. As I think it's stated in the program, Billy fished about 36 years worth in Florida, 57 years in North Carolina. A little bit of that overlapped, but he was always on the water. And I'm trying to think of a few things that always stood out about Billy to me. Billy was going to find a way to get something done. You've heard some of that from Bark and Charles. Well, if nobody else could do it, Billy could. Billy was going to always find a shortcut, too. We could rely on Billy to say, find us a shortcut out the inlet and save us about a half a mile. He'd be the first one through the South Way to know if it's deep enough. He was always an adventurer, to say the least. I think maybe even Billy might have been the first person to bring ballyhoos to North Carolina. I think he's credited with that. I'm sure there was many other things, too. Because of his fishing down in Florida and then coming back to North Carolina, we were always learning. I think maybe the red skirts, you know. If it was the latest and greatest, Billy usually had it. There's a few things, some stories I've heard about Billy. Some I can share and some I cannot. But I've heard this story one time that Billy was he was going to make his day no matter what. They weren't going to stop him. And Billy, I think this is right. And one time you had a motor, you had to take it out of your boat. You didn't want to stop fishing, so you took the motor out, put a barrel of water in the boat to counterbalance the boat. While the motor was being fixed, you're still fishing on one. Is that right, Billy? I thought so. He was an innovator. I think I heard a story one time about trying to put a motor in a boat with no equipment. I mean, not a chain fall, nothing, a hoist. They filled up the boat, this little boat, they filled it up. They were trying to put a diesel engine in it, and they filled it up with chunks of firewood. And they pushed the motor by hand in the boat off a dock, and then they started pulling the pieces of wood out one at a time until they worked the motor down in place and bolted her in and went fishing. Billy was he's an engineer. He's more than a fisherman. he always had a few, I call it bomberisms. Now, if I was to say, I just got shampooed on 95, you might not know what that means. But that means he had a flatline bite, head and shoulders, just outside the point, what he considered I-95, where all the marlin were. So, head and shoulders, he was, you've heard of that Geico commercial, everybody knows that. Well, 20 years ago, that was Billy. I'd go to Billy and say, Billy, if you crank that flat line up just a little bit closer to the teeth, everybody said, well, sure, everybody knows that. And that was Billy. Well, sure, everybody knows that. But I've talked about Billy and as a fisherman, but as I mentioned, he was an engineer, he was a boat builder, he was going to get it done. I can share with you, one time I wanted to build a boat, and it was a big deal for me. I took everything in the world and sold it, and I had this boat plan. And I went around to a couple people, one of them my father-in-law, who was a boat builder, and I tried to get some input, and they weren't really too excited about it, but I went and talked to Captain Billy, and his enthusiasm got me in the boat building business. I can tell you that he sat down with me in his dining room, and we went over those drawings meticulously. He loved it. That's his passion. I'm going to tell you what, he's good at it. Don't let anybody fool you. I think he taught Roy Merritt how to build boats, if truth be known. Billy has accomplished a lot of great things in his career. And I'd like to say nobody deserves this award. There's many deserve, but nobody deserves it more than my friend Billy Baum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul Spencer. Some great remarks and some funny ones. To accept the Tommy Gifford Award, please welcome Billy Baum to the stage. On to this. Come here, Billy. Give us a few words of wisdom here.
Well, first off, I want to thank the IGFA for giving me this honor to represent the IGFA even more so. But anyway, it's the truth. Everyone, these guys have told you, but there's still a lot more. That's too many details to express. But anyway, I'll say that one of the things I've learned is more so about catching the fish. Like I've tried a lot of lures, a lot of baits, and but the main thing, the best thing of all about that is the steering wheel. The steering wheel is what does the catching of the fish. And always remember that and catch them in the left corner of the mouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Bill. Hang on, man. What a character. Thank you, Captain Billy Baum. Our next honoree of the night is Bonefish Sam Ellis. I love the picture in that book, man. That is the coolest picture. You kidding me? To tell you a little bit more about Bonefish Sam, please welcome to the stage Captain Gary Stoof.
Right where? First, I'd like to thank Bonefish's family and friends from Bimini for being here. It's probably not as easy as driving down from Hope Sound like I did, but it's an honor to be talking about Sam. Samuel Ellis was born on November 27th, 1919. I'm on table 19. In the Berry Islands. I didn't know that. He received his early education at the Bimini All-Age School. During recess, young Sammy would pass by the fishing docks to eat his snack, and there was many who would listen to his melodious voice and invite him to sing another song. One day he was invited aboard a tourist ship, and that was his last day at school. The boat belonged to the Colemans, a wealthy family from Florida. Upon their return to Florida, Mr. Coleman sent Ellis a large box of clothes, 2 sets of boxing gloves, and a rod and reel. It was the beginning of both his fishing and his boxing careers. Known as Bonefish Sam, before there was Bonefish just about everything in some name, Ellis honed his skills by walking the beach and catch bonefish. Soon he performed the art of bone fishing. Early in his career, he was recognized as having landed 3 times as many bonefish as anybody else doing it. He was famous for his ultra-keen eyesight, he was a highly valued crew member for his great strength and his ability as a wireman on giant tuna and marlin. His notable clients included the Duke of Windsor, the Ford and DuPont families, George Lyon, Van Heeler, Jim Kimberly, and the Drake family, U.S. Congressman Adam Clayton Powell, Ernest Hemingway, and Michael and Helen Lerner. In addition to his fishing career, Ellis was also a fine boxer who went a few rounds with Hemingway. I'd love to have seen that. In 1959, he was featured in Life magazine along with his wife Irene and 9 of his 17 children. He was Father of the Year in the Bahamas in 1987, and in 1999 received the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism First Cacique Award for leisure and sports. In 1999, he was inducted to the Bimini Fishing Hall of Fame, a kind man who always opened his home to anyone who needed a place to rest and a head and a warm meal. Rest their head, not a head, probably that too. Ellis was founder and pastor of the Community Church of God, where he remained until his death on March 12, 2003. I first met Sam in the early 60s. Actually, I first met Sam in 1959. Like, back then you got Life magazine, maybe the Saturday Evening Post, Sports Illustrated, Outdoor Life, and Field and Stream. That's what was in my mailbox. And here's this Bahamian, and they're talking all about Bimini, and I'd never been to Bimini. My dad had been to Bimini. I heard lots of stories about Bimini, but I'd never heard about Bonefish Sam because my dad was a blue water fisherman, and I think in those days, well, Sam was probably fishing in the flats. Anyway, I never got a chance to ask my dad about that because he died that summer, but I went to Bimini as a mate in the early 60s, and the people we were fishing, they had enough guests where they wanted to ocean fish. I was a blue water fisherman, and now I'm a shallow water fisherman. But back then, I wish I thought more about shallow water back then. I'd have been talking to him day and night, just picking his brain and learning about it. But I was in the deep water. Anyway, the people had enough guests, and we had Sam chartered. And one night the boss says, we're not going out to the restaurant tonight. Sam's going to bring some conch down or some Bahamian food that his wife is preparing for us. And I'd never eaten conch in my life, maybe fritters or something like that in a bar. But anyway, and this wasn't cracked conch. This was like a stew. And he brought pigeon peas and rice. And I tell you what, I can probably name maybe 5 of the top meals I've ever had in my life. And that's right in the top 5. So that was my... And then right after dinner, Sam asked if he could sing, and he was singing all these hymns, and he had a beautiful voice. I mean, he was amazing. The next encounter, well, every time I came to Bimini, Sam always came down and said hello. He was kind of like, I called him the mayor of Bimini, But anyway, we were tuna fishing, and 1971, we'd just come from Cat Key. We'd won the tournament down there. We felt all good about ourselves. And I had a different angler in Bimini, and the first day was okay. There was some fish caught, and I think we were in second or third place. And then the wind just dropped out. It was flat, calm. Nobody wanted to fish. They tuna fishing in the Bahamas, when it gets calm, you take the day off. It's just the opposite. The rougher it is, the better it is. Usually if it's too rough, you stay in. So anyway, my angler booked Sam to go bone fishing for 2 or 3 days. Finally, the last day of the tournament, well, you got to go. So he said, you mind if Sam comes along? I said, we're going to need all the luck we can get. So we brought Sam along, and we threw a Hail Mary pass. I mean, it was flat, calm. Didn't really think we were going to see anything. We just went through the motions, and so we ran all the way to Orange Key. We ran by everybody. Everybody thought we were crazy because they were saving gas and just idling and waiting for 4 o'clock. And we get way down there and way up inshore. It looked like a doggone coral reef up there. There was all these ripples and stuff, and we go over there, and there's a school of pushers up there, and we pull a bait in front of them, hooked up right away. We're a half a mile from the edge. You can see the bottom. We got this fish all settled down, and we pulled a hook. So we take off, and darn if we don't find him again. About 5 or 10 minutes later, we get another bite. Same thing, up in the shallows. He's not going anywhere. We don't have to worry about the sharks. But he didn't waste a whole lot of energy going deep because he didn't have anywhere to go. We were on top of him, and we had the double line. The double line came off the reel. We must have had the double line 10 or 12 times, and we kept losing it. Finally, we got the leader. The same deal. The mate had to keep letting the leader go, and the angler was getting frustrated. He probably hadn't had that, anything happen to, and the longer you have him on, we just knew we were going to lose him. It wasn't good, and the angler started cussing and swearing and taking the Lord's name in vain. There was a lot of GD words going around, and all of a sudden this voice comes from down below, and it says, "He doesn't mean it, Lord. He doesn't mean it." And that just sort of changed the whole mood. Everybody relaxed. The angler chilled out. We took our time and we caught the fish, and it was the winning fish. And if I got time for one more Sam story, a few years after that, we'd been over there for about a month and a half, 2 months, and we were stopping by Bimini for our last week over there. Sam came and fishing had been kind of slow. We had started deep water snapper fishing or anything just to have some action. So we had caught this real big silk snapper, and the boss wanted to mount it. So we had it right in the top of the freezer. And we were talking to Sam. I said, Sam, he asked me what we were doing. I said, well, we were catching some silk snappers. And I said, we caught a real nice big, yeah, and no, it's the other one, the big pink one with the big eye, queen snapper. So anyway, we showed it to him. I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, I wasn't paying attention. Here comes Sam walking down the dock, and he's got 2 police-looking guys with him and a couple of dignitary guys, with suits on. And I'm like, what's this all about? And Sam's going, open your freezer, open your freezer. And I'm like, all I'm thinking is about maybe we might have had a little bit too many lobsters in that freezer, He'd been over there for a while, and we might have had just a couple over the limit. And I figured, oh my God, I'm going to Nassau. I can see it now. And my life was flashing in front of my eyes. And he comes up, he says, I want to show these men that silk snapper. And I go, glad you can have it if you want it. He scared the life out of me, but Sam was a fine man. He was, he was a real gentleman, and that's probably the side of Sam that, besides the fisherman, we all know that, but he was truly a good human being, and he's greatly missed. And I learned a lot from him, just about life too, really. And I wish that I had the enthusiasm for flats fishing then that I have now. I mean, it would have been amazing to go fishing with him. I never spent a day with him on the flats, but he spent a day with me in the deep water, and it was a darn good day. So congratulations to Sam. I feel honored to be in the same group with him.
Captain Peter Wright, you got a story for us too, please? No, take your time. This is what it's all about.
First of all, I'm so pleased to see all these Bahamians here. I have one daughter. Her name is Bimini Lee Wright. She's been to Bimini a few times. But I was a teenager working on a boat out of Hillsborough, Captain John Whitmer. The first time I ever got the privilege and opportunity to fish with Sammy Ellis. He was the number one mate. I was the last mate. That was my official title. I was a kid. And Sam was good to me. He was a good man, hell of a fisherman. When things were slow and there wasn't a lot of tourism in the Bahamas, he fed about half of the island with the fish that he caught fishing deep dropping. Everything that's been said about him, I double and triple in spades. He was a hell of a guy. Thank you folks for coming. He was a wonderful representative. Thank you.
Let me find my spot here. I got some notes in there. To accept the Tommy Gifford Award on behalf of her late father, please welcome Pamela Ellis Mills to the stage.
Good evening to all. This is truly a bittersweet moment for us. It's bitter in that our dad isn't here to share in this memory, but it's sweet that you thought enough of him to recognize him this evening. And with me, and I wanted them to accompany me on stage, I've got several of my siblings. We have grandchildren here and even a great-grandchild. Everything you heard so far of my dad, everything you've heard so far is true. He was a great man, an extraordinary fisherman, a husband, a father. He was a pastor, a businessman, a musician, a brother, a friend. He was a boxer. There were so many titles that he owned. I could stay here all night naming them. But we are truly humbled by this evening, and we are grateful to all of you who have made it quite possible for us to be here, for your voting board and the persons who have elected him to be inducted. We truly are grateful. To Mike and Julie and Denise, you've been so good, and the IGFA, you've been so good to us with all the arrangements and our traveling here and calling and telling you who was coming, who was not coming and all. Thank you so much. The Bahamas government, and also we have representatives here from the Ministry of Tourism in the Bahamas, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart, they're here with us tonight as well. And we accept this on behalf of the people of Bimini, of friends and loved ones who are gathered here and those who are not, on behalf of my dad, and to all the fishermen all over the world, and to the young fishermen out of Bimini, because that's where he spent all of his professional life, those ones who are aspiring to be just like Bonefish Sam. We accept this award with pride, with dignity, and with love. And we say that God bless you all. And if my daddy was here, he'd say, let the church say, amen. Thank you so much.
Hang on 1 minute. I want to bring Leonard up here. Leonard Stewart, would you please come up here for a photograph? Is there anybody else that'd like to come up from that table? Come over this way.
Hold the award so we get the award.
Right here, I got it. It's a very special moment, and I want to welcome you all up here. You just got to listen to the photographer. All the way down if we can.
We need big land. We need big land.
Then you go on the side.
Our next honoree is Kenny Baranovich. To tell you a little bit more about Kenny, welcome to the stage, Captain Carl Anderson.
For those of us on the committee, this is these two guys were brought to our attention, and they also represent kind of the essence of this whole deal. Most of us started on little charter boats and been doing it for a long time, fished with our fathers, and both these guys, the same scenario. So we're really, really, really pleased to have all these guys tonight. But Captain Kenny Baranovich was born and raised on the peninsula of Biloxi, Mississippi. Surrounded by water, it seemed that the choice to make his career on the waters of the Mississippi Gulf was inevitable. At the age of 14, Baranovich became first mate on the President Kennedy, one of the many trawlers that lined the coast in the late 1950s. She would be the first boat that Baranovich's father, the late Yankee Baranovich, would acquire in his charter business. For the next 6 years, Kenny and his father worked to build their business. They changed the boat name to the Miss Hospitality to better appeal to visitors. Fish and fun on the Miss Hospitality would be their signature catchphrase for the next 40-plus years. Kenny worked for Ingalls Shipbuilding for some time to support his wife and 3 daughters, but ultimately returned to his true passion, the charter business. It was at this time that he got his captain's license, and he and his father upgraded to a 51-foot custom sport fishing boat. Kenny faced many obstacles during his career, including the death of his father, numerous hurricanes that affected the charter fishing business in the Gulf. Over 5 decades later, Kenny never gave up on the business he helped his father create. He still enjoys heading out to the waters of the Mississippi Gulf Coast and putting charters on great fish. I'd like to invite Dustin Trossett and Mike McDermott to please come up here and talk a little about Kenny. I got the wrong damn names up here. All right, come on up, Jerry. Jerry Monroe.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very simply, it's an honor and privilege to be here before you. I've known both these gentlemen my entire adult life. I've enjoyed many good times with all of them. And, you know, very simply, all I can say is these two guys, and I'm speaking Jay, but Captain Kenny specifically, these guys have put thousands and thousands of smiles on people's faces over the past 40 years of their lives. They truly enjoy what they do, and they're damn good at what they do. They catch fish, they make people happy, And that's what they like to do. They are just, if you ever have a chance to talk to them this evening, they're just jovial, fun people. They really are. They enjoy talking about fishing. They enjoy what they do. But the most part thing is they enjoy making people happy. And they are good at it. Trust me. And the last thing I want to say is, I know, without a doubt, both their dads, JP and Ms. Madeline and Mr. Yankee and Ms. Myrtle, they're smiling down upon their children right now. Because I'm going to tell you, they have just done a tremendous job their entire lives, and they're not here to share this with them. And if they were here right now, they'd be the first one back going, woo-hoo, love my children. All right? Thank y'all so much, and I'm so proud to be here to be a part of this. Thank you.
Don Marie here to say anything?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Don Murray, would you please come up here? You got a lot of stories.
It's not that much. All right. Well, thank you. And I'm like Jerry. It's quite an honor to be here. And when I was asked to do this by Bobby Carter, I just wasn't sure what I was going to do or say other than I thought I was going to introduce Kenny. I heard some of the other people before me tell a couple of funny stories. Unfortunately, I've been with Kenny a long time, and some of them I can't tell up here. But anyway, before I get to what I did prepare, I do have one funny story. And as Jerry mentioned, Kenny got into business with his father, Yankee Bohanovich, who was quite an entrepreneur on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. He did things not only in the fishing industry, but as well as promoting Elvis back when he was a no-name. No one knew who this guy was. But aside from that, we had a funny thing, and as a lot of you who have been associated with the charter boat business understand, a lot of it is cash business, you know? And so the favorite thing, and I'll get ahead of myself a little bit, but excuse me, I've been with Kenny since 1973. Not only is he a great captain, he's also my cousin. So I started going along with him just to assist the deckhands. I just enjoyed doing it. I was like the unofficial deckhand. And in the afternoons when we get in, Yankee would be the first one waiting for us to come in. He'd come up to Kenny and he'd say, "How many people did you have?" Kenny'd say, "About 14. And Yankee'd say, "Well, wait a minute. You can't have about 14. You either have 13, you either have 15, or you either have 14. Remember, there was cash involved here. So that was our favorite thing with Yankee. We had the about that many. But again, tell you a little something about Kenny that hadn't already been read. Kenny began his career in 1960 at what was best known back then as a Biloxi Small Craft Harbor. He began as a mate on his father's boat. Back in the day, that was when everyone enjoyed coming down in the afternoons, watching the boat come in. There was a snack bar where you can enjoy, the adults could enjoy their favorite beverages, and the kids sat around and watched them clean the fish. In 1965, the Broadwater Marina opened, which was part of, at that time, the flagship hotel on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, where Kenny stayed until he was until it was destroyed in 2005 by Hurricane Katrina. And as I also mentioned, that was just one of the setbacks that he and Jay had over a number of years. And I also want to stop right here and say, I've been knowing, excuse me, I've been fighting a little cold here. But anyway, I've been knowing Jay quite a while too, and I probably got associated with Jay and his family through the charter boat business. We also had the opportunity to sit with Carl and Bark this afternoon and tell stories, and it's amazing over the years, and I'm sure many of you in these rooms are proud of the fact that, people that work for you on your boat, deckhands, mates, have gone on to be better, gone on to maybe pursue the same career as a captain or maybe a private vessel captain. But when we were sitting around this afternoon telling the stories, it was amazing how many people had moved on from Jay's boat, how many people had moved on from Kenny's boat to where they still pursue a career in charter boat and fishing business. But again, Kenny and I, we enjoyed a lot of good times, and there's many stories we could share. But as Kenny went on, the one thing Kenny also had, aside from the love of fishing, is his love of his family. Very, very much, he's a family man. He raised 3 beautiful daughters who are with us tonight, Rachel, Renee, and Jennifer. He and Diane, who had been married, he and Diane, who had been married for over 50 years, have 5 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchildren. And again, his son-in-law, Greg Hebert, who is with us, is a successful charter boat operator in Biloxi, Mississippi, as well as a private captain. Kenny and his family have been an instrumental part on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in promoting the fishing industry as well as the tourist industry. They've been through many ups and downs. The hurricanes, BP oil spill, financial setbacks, the economy, just like many of you in this room have suffered through the same thing. But I want to say, throughout it all, he's persevered. He believes in this industry. He's a pioneer in this industry, as well as the next Biloxi recipient that we're going to hear from later. But he's a great captain, a great family man, and he's a brother to me like I love him to death.
To accept the Tommy Gifford Award, please welcome Captain Kenny Baranovich to the stage.
Thank you. I'm not much of a speaker, but I'm a better bullshitter. Yeah. And I can do that with the best of them. One-on-one, I'm hell. But my wife told me not to curse. I started when I was a young kid, and I hated it. I mean, all of my friends, they was going to parties and all summer long, and hit me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting back at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and going to bed too damn tired. So my daddy was a great man, and he put me in the business to keep me out of trouble. But it was a fun ride. I mean, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I enjoyed pleasing people, and you gotta love what you do. You know, a guy from the newspaper called me and says, "What do you hold us to? I mean, being in the business this long." I said 2 things: you either got to love it or be stupid. So I'm half and half, you know. I mean, I've got a lot of good friends. I've taken a lot of real good people out, James Mansfield, and when I was young, we went out with Hank Williams Sr. My daddy used to be a promoter on the coast. He'd get up there and he'd knock on the door drunk. They'd run him out of the hotel, say, "Move it over, Yankee." I mean, move it over. You know, I tell my brother, move over in the bed, because there comes that guy again. You know? So I jump in the bed with my brother, but you know, Biloxi's got a lot of history to it. I'm talking about, you know, Elvis, and we always had something to do in Biloxi. Fishing was great, and we got a different type of fishing than a lot of people got. I mean, we do a lot of trolling, but I was showing the guy at Merritt's a picture of some redfish. He said, "Man, I caught a redfish that big." We catch them trolling. I mean, if you got 10 lines on, I got pictures. Me and Jay got pictures of schools of redfish with 10,000 fish in it, solid gold, you know, and it's a good fishery, you know. And I like to thank everybody. This is not on my bucket list. I had to take something out to put this in, but I'm glad I did. Thank y'all.
I'll be over to talk to you in a little while.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to have a run together. Congratulations to Captain Kenny. Our next honoree of the evening is Jay Lcc. To tell you a little bit more about Jay, please welcome to the stage Captain Bart Garnsey. Bart will be easy on you, I guarantee it. He don't know too many stories about you, Jay.
What I like about Skip Smith is his last name is real easy to say. You know, they're doing this, the way they do this now has changed a little bit. They make us read a lot of stuff, and some of us that were dropouts, it's a little tough. I'd never met Jay Lcc, and I'm going to stick with that. That's how I'm saying it. How'd I do? All right, man. I've been studying it all afternoon. Carl and I came down this afternoon and down to BMR and met these guys, and I never have met them. I've heard a lot about them. It was a thrill. These cats are the real deal, and it was so much fun. We were there we spent an hour and a half or so. 3 or 4 guys that I grew up with here on the East Coast went out there. They knew them real well, and they're a super bunch of guys. I don't want to struggle through this and read it. As much as I hate to do it, I could make up another story and tell you about something else altogether, but they told me I had to read this, so here we go. Captain Jay, and this is Jay Lcc, that was right over there, by the way. Captain Jay was raised in the charter business in Mississippi coast. He began working with his father, not unlike about half of the rest of the fishermen in here. The late Captain J.P. on the Gay J, at the age of 12, and that's not unlike good friend Charles Perry and myself, a bunch of us started at about that same age, so we all got a lot in common. He served as a deckhand during the tournaments in high school and in his college years. Although Lcc, and I almost got it right, enjoyed his time at the University of Southern Mississippi, the excitement of catching cobia and red snapper and jack crevalle, king mackerel, and grouper was his true calling. His career as a licensed captain began in 1974 when he purchased his first boat, the Silver Dollar. As the business grew, and he and his father spent the better part of 3 years designing and building the Silver Dollar One, a 50-foot fiberglass sport fisherman, without the benefit of blueprints. They're kind of like the Merritts, actually, if you think about it, I guess. I hadn't really thought about that before. I probably shouldn't have thought about it now, actually, but Lcc was highly regarded in the charter industry for bringing the first custom-built catamarans into the area in 1997. He christened his third boat the Silver Dollar II, and it was a 50-foot custom-built catamaran. He now operates the new Silver Dollar III, an updated 52-foot catamaran purchased in 2009. A charter member and the past president of the Mississippi Charter Boat Captains Association, Lcc is a member in good standing of the Mississippi Gulf Fishing Banks Association, there's a lot of big words in here, National Association of Charter Boat Operators, and the Biloxi Bay Chamber of Commerce. In over 50 years of fishing, he has endured many challenges, including dozens of major hurricanes, the aftermath of the BP oil spill, numerous regulatory restrictions, Can we blame this on Obama? Did I hear a yes over here? Did I hear an amen? Oh, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Okay, where am I here? Let's see. The aftermath of the BP oil spill and numerous regulatory restrictions. But plans to stay in the business until he passes, just like his father before him. Fishing truly is a family affair for the Trussets. And I'm now turning the page. His wife, Vicky, he and his wife, Vicky, run the business, and their two sons, Dustin and Brandon, are now third-generation charter captains. I'd like to invite Don Marie, and I think I had maybe the wrong names because Skip got this all messed up and threw me a curve. So who am I introducing? I'm not really sure. Y'all come on up here. Whoever's supposed to come up next, hurry up.
What you doing my note right there?
Oh,
Michael McDermott.
There you go. Okay, I got Dustin and Michael. There they go. Sorry about that. We need a new secretary.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
You know, Jay told me one day when we were running in, fishing was a tough business because you're only really as good as your last trip. When you got a guy like Jay who's out there running, 125, 150 days a year and producing, above average results every day, you're dealing with, you're dealing with a fisherman that's a cut above everybody else. When I found out that Jay was going to get this award, I started doing a little research on the award, and I found that it's awarded to guys that have made a significant impact in the industry in their area. My dad and I were talking about, what kind of impact Jay and Kenny as well have had on the industry in our area. And I think the biggest thing that they've done is provide an opportunity for young guys, provide an opportunity for young guys that are looking to get into the business, teach them what it means to be a good mariner, teach them what it means to be a successful fisherman. I'd have to imagine if you had $1 for every hour of sea time that Jay signed over his career, you probably wouldn't have to work too hard anymore. Speaking of those guys, Mr. Bobby asked me to come up with a funny story to share with y'all, and to be honest, I couldn't really think of any that weren't at my expense. Until Dustin and I were comparing notes, and a lot of guys worked for Jay, and Harold Ketchite used to work for Jay, and we were fishing one day, and he was telling me a story about, Jay gets bad kidney stones, or he did. He blames it on drinking too much tea or root beer or something. He was passing a kidney stone during a trip. He refused to cancel the trip. He was out there, and I guess the pain or something, made him sick to his stomach. He was thrown up in a bucket on the bridge. It was a little rough out, and the charter asked Harold, they said, does the captain normally throw up when it gets rough like this? And Harold, without missing a beat, said only when he's hungover. Well, I'm proud to say that I've gotten the opportunity to work under Jay. I'm humbled that the Trussets asked me to be a part of this evening. It's a real special experience. Congratulations to Captain Jay. Captain Jay's son, Dustin Trosset, is going to come up and say a few words next.
We're short. I got to get this low. First of all, I'd like to thank the IGFA and the committee and Carl for thinking about people up there in the Northern Gulf, like my dad and Captain Kenny, and recognizing us. We had a good time since we've been down here. I'd like to thank Mr. Merritt for letting us come around and bum around his boatyard and act like we knew what we were doing around there. And I'd also like to thank the 3 tables of people from Biloxi or South Mississippi that traveled up here to congratulate our 2 guys. Thank y'all. So you may have heard some of this earlier, but this is a son's point of view. My dad has always told me, you have to make while the sun shines, son. He's one of the hardest working men I know, and he gets his work ethic and drive from his father, my grandfather, who was a World War II vet who drove Higgins landing crafts in the Pacific. He was a very driven and hard-working man himself. He started a charter fishing business in Biloxi in 1959. My dad is always on the go. A former mate and good friend of ours nicknamed him Quick about 25 years ago, and he's still living up to that. I've watched my dad's drive and work ethic my whole life. About 7 years after owning his own boat, his first boat, a slow single screw, somebody was talking about single screw, a slow single screw wooden boat, he decided to upgrade and bought a fiberglass hull. And along with my grandfather, who was an established boat builder, built his second boat from the hull up, a 52-foot fiberglass sportfish. One day my dad fell off a scaffold board and hurt his back. I can remember him walking and let me rephrase that, not being able to walk, but he showed up for work. Because he would have nothing less, and neither would my grandfather. Another example is, like Michael B. told us, I can remember being with him on the boat during a kidney stone attack, throwing up, running a boat, but it didn't matter. You got to show up for work. It's the way it is. My dad worked hard to build a good business with loyal clientele and a good name brand, with the simple idea of whatever it takes to make them happy, son. Wanting to stay ahead of the curve, he decided it was time to upgrade a second time and took some advice my grandfather had given him before he passed and built a catamaran. The Silver Dollar II, his third boat, a 52-foot aluminum catamaran. Not many people had seen catamarans in our area, but it worked out pretty good because he's now on his fourth boat, the second catamaran, the Silver Dollar III. Now, my dad wrestled with the idea of naming this boat after his father. He wanted to name it the Captain JP after his dad, Captain Jules Pierre Trossacet. But he, in his business sense, decided that the best thing to do would stick with the brand he had worked so hard to create and went with Silver Dollar III. I had a front row seat for most all of this when I was growing up in a fishing family. When I was young, I loved to go out and run trips with my dad. I loved being out there, but I wanted to play and he wanted me learning something. I was so fortunate because I could work with my dad and be fishing because, like Captain Kinney said, we were trolling and we were all close together. So I'm working with my dad and my grandfathers. He was a fairly loud fella. He didn't need a VHF because you could hear him talking from where he was. So it was really a family event. So I decided that this is what I needed to do. Until I turned into a teenager who knew everything. Then I set a world record. I hold the world record for quitting and or being fired from the same job more times than anybody. People have worked for their father and they may understand that. But I've grown up and we probably only fight 6 or 8 times a day now, maybe, I don't know. But along the way, my dad has built a good business. He's trained many mates, as Captain Kinney has, who are captains themselves now. One of them who worked for my dad and Kinney, Captain Adam Ladnier, was honored Thursday night by the Billfish Foundation for winning the White Marlin Tagging Award. Captain Adam Ladnier. Another Biloxi boy. But he's also been a dad that would give advice, whether it was asked for or not. A dad who was always trying to teach me something. A dad who knew nothing about soccer, but never missed a soccer game in high school. A dad who coached my brother in baseball and never missed a game and still does the same thing with my nephews, his grandsons, coaches and never misses a game. Soccer, baseball, whatever it is, he's there. He raised 2 sons to become captains and who both own their own businesses, myself and my brother, Brandon, who's not here tonight. He's also has a grandson, my nephew, who comes on the boat with us, and we're hoping he will be our 4th generation in the charter fishing industry, and we're very proud of that. But besides that, he taught me to be a man. He taught me that family comes first and to always be proud where I come from, and I couldn't be prouder of my dad tonight.
Congratulations. To accept the Tommy Gifford Award, please welcome Jay Trosset to the stage.
Let's see. Kenny told me for 2 weeks he wouldn't speak long. Wow, these people. Anyway, first I'd like to. Kenny and I grew up together. He's a couple of years older than me. He looks a lot older, but he's not. But we actually started deck camp at the same time, and that's how I met Kenny, because we were from different ends of town. And I tell people, we had somebody interview us for the paper there, and they tried to get me to say something bad about Kenny. They tried to get Kenny to say something bad about me, and I said, you know, we're competitors, but at the end of the day, you know, we the grand scheme of things, we're friends, and I'm honored to be on the same platform with Kenny and the rest of these fine captains. Fishing has been good to me. It's something that I always liked to do. I thought I was a pretty good baseball player growing up, and all my friends practiced and played baseball, and I started working with my father. I quit baseball at 12 or 13, and you know, I missed out on a lot of things because I was fishing every day, and when we fished back in the early 60s, it was daylight till dark. It wasn't a 7 to 3 job. I'm very honored and humbled to be here and accept this award. And there's 2 people. My father got me in this business. And he said, you know, you college and go back and go teach school. And I said, nah, I really want to fish because I always wanted to. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my wife, because she is, behind every good man is a good woman. And she's kept us together. And a lot of times, you know, the women get overlooked, and you know, I'm out talking and forgetting her, but without Vicki, I never would be here tonight. Thank you.
Our next honoree of the evening is Bob Montgomery. To tell you, yahoo! To tell you a little bit more about Bob, please welcome Captain Gary Ellis. Gary, come on up here.
Hey, very good. Thank you very much. There's a lot of guides here that learned from Bob Montgomery, and a lot of them that truly respect him. How many guides have been where Bob Montgomery, we know a lot of you out there. You've been out there. Bob was a Florida native, a second-generation guide, following in the footsteps of both his father and his uncle. He passed his love of fishing along to his daughter, Michelle, who is over here with his wife, Marie. Hello. Montgomery started light tackle fishing after he was discharged from the Navy. He had, I got to get into my notes here, but he had a very interesting time in the early years. We're lucky to have Bob to be returned to the United States after his Cubana airline flight from Havana to U.S. Naval Base in Guantanamo was hijacked by Castro. In 1958, he was 21 years old, the only American in 28 passengers on the flight. They were held captive for 6 days before being released to the International Red Cross. So he got lucky, and so did we, the Florida Keys fishing community. We got Bob back from Cuba. After his discharge from the Navy, Bob started light tackle fishing in Key West in January 1969, when there were only 2 other light tackle guides in town, one being his brother. According to the Key West guide Jeffrey Cardenas, a lot of you remember him, he's still around, up until the 1980s, when Jeffrey started guiding, Bob and Jean Montgomery had Key West tackle fishing virtually to themselves. Light tackle fishing, fly fishing off the coast of Key West. They stood apart from any of the few guides that were there. They fished the isolated wrecks, reefs, out of sight of land before the advent of GPS. Imagine for a moment, you young guides that have been around for a long time, the last few years, what would you do without a GPS? It wasn't easy. Bob could navigate his way to secret spots in his boat. His boat was the Blue Runner, using the long-lost art of dead reckoning, time, speed, distance, and he could go off into the Gulf of Mexico, out of sight of land, and be on top of a small wreck with the help of a couple birds. But time, speed, and distance, that was the key. He was also an expert on the flats. Bob knew the movement of tarpon almost as if he had a migratory road map of where the tarpon were moving. He knew where the permit were, his favorite fish, on what tide, on moon phase, was the permit. He knew where to be, what time, what moon phase, what tide. He knew the Marquesas Keys better than anyone, and most often in the 70s and 80s, Bob was the only guy there. He was the only person fishing the Marquesas Keys. A lot of the guides here in the audience could say, boy, I'd love to have been there. Captain Jeffrey Cardenas claimed Bob had a personality that was a bit curmudgeonous. Is that the word, curmudgeon? At the time, if an angler missed an easy shot after 20 minutes of poling towards a school of fish, he would bark, practice your casting before you spend a couple $100 and waste my time. There was nothing malicious about this, not mean-spirited. Bob Montgomery was merely striving for perfection. He was good. And he didn't want to work his butt off to put you in a spot to not be as good as he was. Bob's outstanding reputation attracted many outstanding anglers. In 1971, he guided Jimmy Lopez, if you remember, to the Miami Met Tournament Master Angler. That was a tournament that we had in the city of Miami that went for years, and it was a very prestigious award to win the Master Angler of the Miami Met. Bob guided American sportsman host Kurt Gowdy, who used to come down to the Keys quite often. He guided him on 2 ABC TV shows. One segment featured Terry Bradshaw. I don't know if you remember. This is back when he had a full head of hair, when Terry Bradshaw had long hair. This was in 1973. They were fishing for tarpon. He also did another show in 1974 with Jonathan Winters and Ernest Borgnine, fishing the wrecks for cobia and jacks. But the show with Terry Bradshaw was one of Gowdy's best memories of the American sportsman. Gowdy tells the story that they were at the Marquesas Keys, staked out on a long strip of white sand bottom where tarpon were coming down, sliding down the edge of the white sand. Since Bradshaw was not a fly fisherman, he couldn't fly fish. He was casting spinning lures at the tarpon, and they wouldn't eat. They refused to eat. Bob continued to say, they want to fly. They want to eat a fly. These fish want to eat a fly. Terry asked Kurt Gowdy to show him how to catch one on fly, and Kurt smiled. I thought you'd never ask. Kurt caught one about 70, 80 pounds right off the bat, first cast. They went back to the dock. Bob gave Terry Bradshaw, a crash course in fly fishing. He was a fast learner. With the cameras rolling on the white sand strip, Bob spotted a single tarpon coming 200 feet away. This is after they went back out on the beach. He instructed Bradshaw where to make the cast as to get it closer. Terry, his cast was perfect. He made 3 short strips. The fly disappeared into the bucket mouth of the huge fish, and they were amazed that they were hooked up on his first try. But the ensuing fight, the big fish turned, ripped the rod out of Terry's hand, and it went skipping across the water out in front of the boat. And, just like being on top of a good fumble, as a fumbled football, Bradshaw dove in the water, and he successfully covered the rod and the reel, not the fish. Bob and Kurt Gowdy were rolling on the deck in the back of the boat, just in bouts of laughter. Bob explained he'd never seen a tarpon sack a quarterback before. Kurt Gowdy said it turned out to be the greatest footage that you could imagine, and it was a wonderful show. Montgomery was active in the early years of the Florida Keys Guides Association. He served on the board of directors. He did just a tremendous support for Florida Keys fishing guides. Bob was a different guy. Most swamp guides, we call them, Florida Keys fishing guides, backcountry guides or shallow water guides, they wouldn't tell you the time of day or where they've been or where they're going. And Bob wasn't like that. He would help you. He helped so many young guides get started and get to the places that you needed to be, although he did it with time, speed, and distance. He didn't have GPS. He didn't So that was something you had to pretty much pick up yourself. He was instrumental in convincing the board to approve and support the first Redbone Celebrity Tournament Series to catch the cure for cystic fibrosis back in 1988. He was a supporter of ours for all of the years. He helped us in the tournament in Key West. He helped us create the tournament in Miami at Biscayne Bay. He and his wife Marie worked to do our tournament in 92 after the roof of their house had been blown off in Hurricane Andrew. So he was dedicated to good causes, and he was dedicated to the community, our sports fishing community that we have here in the Florida Keys, down in the Florida Keys and in South Florida. The fishing community owes much to Bob's knowledge and guidance over 3 decades of active guiding. He's truly a legend. His legacy is every life of countless lives that he's touched. And think about it, he's touched a number of us. Can you raise your hands how many Bob Montgomery has touched here in South Florida? God bless. Thank you.
Let me keep this one.
What'd I do?
Nothing. Thank you. Great job. I need this to follow my script. Next, Captain Bouncer Smith has a few great words on behalf of Bob Montgomery. You don't need a microphone, do you?
I was going to borrow your hat. God, I love that story. Used to dance on Skip's hat every morning. It's the only way I'd teach him anything about kite fishing. I was lucky enough to share a couple of experiences about Bob Montgomery, and even one with Bob Montgomery. We went down to fish a sailfish tournament with him, myself and Jerry Webb, and we had brand new state-of-the-art plug reels filled with 12-pound test for the sailfish tournament. Jerry took a bad beating that day because Jerry was our angler, I was the mate, Bob was the captain. And every fish that Jerry hooked, he'd backlash the reels. He took a lot of abuse. Jerry was a great angler, very good with a plug reel. But he had no control when the reels kept jumping out of gear. It took half a day to convince Bob that truly the reels were failing and not Jerry. But to give you an idea of what kind of guy Bob was, the next morning he had rebuilt all of our reels, and we didn't have any more reels jump out of gear. Probably saved the trip for us, but it was my only chance to fish with Bob. But what I wanted to convey was something that Gary had touched upon. I graduated from high school, got into the charter boat industry, fishing for sailfish, while my high school dream was to be a flats guide in Islamorada. So after a few years charter boat fishing, I finally went to Islamorada, went into the flats fishing business. My wife got sick. I had to come back to Miami. And I was trying to figure out where I was headed. And one of the guys I followed the career of all the time was Bob Montgomery, and the fact that he was flats fishing and tarpon fishing and sail fishing and wreck fishing on a daily basis. And I says, that's a perfect solution to all of my problems. I love bottom fishing, I love tarpon fishing, and I love sailfish. And if I can follow in Bob Montgomery's footsteps, I'll be in really good shape. So truly, Bob Montgomery was the model that I fashioned my business after. and it's been a hell of a great business model for 35 years. So I really owe a lot of it to Bob Montgomery. He was really a pioneer in light tackle fishing and a great idol to follow. So thank you very much.
I'm glad he taught you all that, Bouncer. You've been a great leader yourself. Thank you very much for that story. At this time, I'd like to present the Tommy Gifford Award, and to accept the award on behalf of her late husband, please welcome Marie Montgomery and also Michelle Montgomery Laurendale. Step over here, and we're going to look at that blonde lady right there for a quick picture. Marie, do you have a few words for us?
It's such an honor to be here tonight to accept the Tommy Gifford Award for Bob. I wished he was here to accept it. I'd like to thank Gary Ellis, Captain Gary Ellis, Captain Bouncer Smith for the kind words. I'd like to thank both of them, Mike Myatt and the committee, for bestowing this award to Bob. I wished he were here. He loved fishing more than anything. Michelle?
This would have meant the world to him. Thank you.
The good news is Bob is still here with us. Look at what Bouncer, he's carrying it on. So Bob is still with us and left a hell of a legacy. Our next honoree of the evening is Captain Lori Wright. To tell you a little bit about Captain Lori, please welcome to the stage again, Captain Peter B. Wright.
I first met Lori down in Australia. I was captain of a boat down there for a year, and we had a lot of mechanical trouble and a lot of stuff, and we had a mother boat that kept breaking down on us. Lori was working on board that boat as deckhand / cook / just about everything. And when the boat finally broke down completely, even though I had 2 perfectly good deckhands, I was talking to Lori about this the other day, and he said, no, there's just 2 of us. When Lori stepped on my boat, he was my 3rd deckhand. We didn't really need a 3rd deckhand, but I didn't want to let Lori Wright get away. He's an electrician. He's an ardent spear fisherman. He loves all kinds of fishing. He's a good round all guy. And if you're ever in trouble anywhere on a boat, Lori Wright is one of the guys you would really love to have with you. I'm very proud to call him my friend. We've spent a lot of time together in the Bahamas and all over the place, and he's a great guy and true deserver of this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Peter. We do have a very special speaker to tell a few more good stories about Captain Lori, and that would be Tim Choate.
Real short. IGFA members, IGFA Executive Board, the committee, and everyone connected with IGFA, thank you for this opportunity. I want to say, I think we've already understood that we're saving the best for the last, and I want to add my personal salute to Lori Wright. If you can just bear with me for a quick few seconds, I will try to hit the highlights and the factoids that I know from my coexistence with Lori Wright. I got to Cairns one of the first few times in 1979, which was Lori's first job with Peter Wright. And the fishing was out of sight. I loved it there. And Lori was a wonderful decky and a tremendously accomplished personality with whom to converse during the course of the days. He's also, one of the things that if you read the resume and the booklet, it's good. But one of the things that they just touch on very briefly is Lori's conservation experience on behalf of the Great Barrier Reef. The activities that he did as the president of their fishing club was incredible. Only through his efforts of leading the other captains and business people could Lori save the GBR from an industry-ending siege to stop marine fishing along the GBR. And if anybody's been to Australia, you know exactly how strong the greenies are down there. Lori took it upon himself and led the parade to save a $60 billion a year effort in the Great Barrier Reef by protecting it from the greenies. Almost 10 years ago, Lori was introduced and inducted into the Cairns Game Fishing Club Hall of Fame. And I think they were late in getting there. But he, like here, has been a member of their committee and obviously shunned the award until it was forced upon him. But he deserved every bit of it and deserves it tonight. He snuck over to the Pacific side, to the Pacific Ocean and to the Caribbean on a 62 Merit, which was, he maintained a wood boat in some of the hardest conditions I've ever seen. He could fix anything, bubble gum, baling wire, he could get it fixed immediately. Now, today, he is the secretary of the fundraising committee to erect a black marlin sculpture on the Cairns Esplanade. The intention, his words, the intention is to unveil the sculpture in conjunction with the Cairns Black Marlin 50th anniversary celebration in September 2016. It has contributed significantly to Cairns in the past, and by increasing the public awareness, it will also contribute to the conservation of the species for future generations to come. His foresight is incredible. As a 5-star boat captain, not only marlin, but barramundi, which he has a fascination for, fantastic farmer of the Brangus cattle, a rancher, and a dauntless working dog breeder, and a warm human being of immense capabilities. And this is just the one spot that I would like to accent. Lori is probably the nicest, most wonderful captain you could ever have in a faraway country. His warmth is unbelievable. Now, when it was back in 1979 and a few years thereafter, the mothership that we were using was a large, long boat that hosted 6 or 7 different sport boats. Potage, exactly. I wasn't going to mention, in any case, it was a great ship with a varied, wide array of fishermen. Some were calling themselves fishermen, but some were actually nothing but partiers. Lori could maintain a beautiful personality with each and every person that you could possibly imagine would go out to the Great Barrier Reef. He was an amazing personality that made everybody feel at home. And then he'd go up, go work on the mothership or the sport boat with Peter. It was an amazing operation that Lori's personality really stood to him the strength of time. Lori, welcome. I salute you. You deserve it. Thank you very much.
That summed up a lot of Lori's career. There's still so much more if you're reading a book about it. Of course, he's got world records. He actually caught one the year I was supposed to work for him, but I got canned before I did it. He hired my brother instead. But it was a good move. Kunta's a lot more fun than I am. Anyhow, they caught the women's 30-pound record, which I think is still standing today. And Lori's been honored here with the Gil Keach Heavy Tackle Award. He's received his awards. What he did for Australia out there in the reef. I did get to work for Lori for one day, and he got to work for me for one day, right? And they were going to let me wire a marlin out there. And I grabbed a leader, and Law says, hold it, hold it. I don't know how big it is. And stuck his head up, and the boys in the cockpit are going, gaff it, gaff it. And Law says, no, 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 and it jumps. I'm down to my last wrap, stretched out, and he goes, it's just under $1,000, let it go. No, break it off. I'd let go. And the fish died. Weighed 990 on the scale, so he knows the size of fish. So I was very impressed, Law. I don't know if that was, if you did that all season or not, but that was sure fun getting to wire a real fish for you. At this time, to accept the Tommy Gifford Award, please welcome, all the way from Australia, Captain Laurie Wright.
Well, I'm not sure what to do after that. I must make an apology first, though, for all those people that were here 2 years ago. I'm sorry, but my kilt never came back from the dry cleaners in time. So I must apologise for that. Brazaka sends his regards, by the way. Yes, after those words from Tim, that's very kind, Tim. And I do want to congratulate the rest of the nominees here, or the inductees tonight. And I will reiterate what Jay Troshachet, if I bastardised your name, Jay, I'm sorry, but I'm an Aussie. But I will reiterate, behind every man there is a good woman, and my good woman can't be here tonight. But I think most of the people here actually were looking forward to seeing Julie and not me. But I think it was Aldous Huxley, I think, that wrote a book called A Fortunate Life, and I think I've had one of those. When I first started working for Peter, he was a great teacher and a mentor, and there was no problems with him giving me advice. He'd call me up to the tower and point out places to go fishing, and all the little sections of the reef that we needed to look at. And in those days, we only had a paper sounder, and he occasionally got a little bit of a navigation, satellite navigation hit every about a couple of hours. So it was, you had to learn landmarks and everything else. And we were 35, 38 miles offshore, so in most days you didn't have many landmarks. But Peter was a great teacher. He took me to the Bahamas, to Bimini. I fished a few tuna seasons there. I did get to meet Sam Ellis on a number of occasions. And we love Bimini so much that my property back in Australia is called Bimini Park. But over the years, it's the people I've met that have made this industry, the people like Skip Smith, and there is a lot of stories that Skip's got. All those who have read his book, I can guarantee and verify that those stories are true. And people at CP, Barkey, O.B. O'Brien, everybody in this room, or a lot of people in this room that I've known, they're always willing to partake of advice and information, sometimes depending on how much rum had been drunk, how pertinent that information was, mind you. But those people were always willing to help. And I've tried to do the same thing right through my career as a captain. I've got a couple of crewmen that are here. Tony DeJulian worked for me for a while. He's turned out to be a pretty fantastic guy, and he does the same thing. He was taught also by Bouncer Smith. And Tony's turned out to be a pretty good guy, and I'm very proud to say that a lot of my crewmen have gone ahead and have done the same thing. So all I can say is thank you, everybody. It's very fortunate, and I'm happy to be here. I do want to come back to the current time. As Tim reiterated and said, we've been fundraising to put together a sculpture, a life-size sculpture of a 1,000-pound marlin in Cairns on the waterfront. It's not only there to recognise the contribution that fish has done to Cairns, but it's also to bring an awareness to our industry and hopefully the conservation of this sport fishing for future generations to enjoy. And I want to particularly thank the IGFA and very much so President Rob Kramer, because without him, our fundraising efforts would have been very difficult. As it stands now, the funds are raised for our sculpture, and some of you people in this room have donated and supported it. I want to thank you also very much. Thank you.
I mean, it seems like the older we get, the more we realize how much conservation we all need to be thinking about. For those of you who don't know, the IGFA had over 50,000 kids go through their program last year here. That's pretty amazing in that program alone. With the IGFA Marlin race, they had over 115,000 miles of marlins now logged with the satellite tag. So there's another program. So anytime you guys are thinking about charities and thinking about programs, IGFA has all sorts of conservation programs that we never talk about, you know. So don't forget about the library. I want to thank each and every one of you for your respect tonight. You were very quiet and respectful, and that's rare, and we appreciate it. Not rare, but it's rare when you get these groups together. So I'd like to thank our committee, and on behalf of the legendary captains and crew and the IGFA, thank you for joining us this evening. This is truly a special night for the recipients of the Tommy Gifford Award and their families. We applaud all of you at tonight's induction and all the past recipients. Again, thank you and good night, and drive careful. Stick around for a drink. Good night.